So as we come into this wrap up of Porter's Five Forces, let's make a quick mention of what the internet and the rise of communications technology is thought to have done to Porter's Five Forces. For the threat of new entrants, if you're doing a retail strategy to contact or to access your consumers, obviously the rise of the internet has opened up a distribution channel that at one point didn't exist. So that has eased the cost of the new entrants uh, quite a bit because it gives them a way to contact their customers. For the buyers and the suppliers, and really even into the substitute products, it becomes a matter that information is more available. So things like it's hard for somebody to charge a high price today because it's so easy to do price matching and find out whether the price you're being offered is competitive. In that sense, it's tended to hurt the profit pool, and the customers are the beneficiaries ultimately of this because everybody knows about what the prices should be. As far as rivalries, this is one that I don't know has changed that much. It's just that they're getting squeezed because of the flow of information in so many of these other venues. So let's go back to the beginning. What did we say that Porter's Five Forces was a story of? Profitability. So in theory, industry profits would be the greatest for industries where there's a relatively low rivalry, there is low threat of new entrants, there's a lack of substitute products, weak buyers and weak suppliers. And you go, well, those types of industries would never exist. And I think you're right. But I'm going to give you an example of one that has in the past been dangerously close. And that's pharmaceutical companies, particularly the ones producing prescription medicine. If you think about it, low rivalry, not because they really have low rivalry, but because they have really good patent protection, which creates a high degree of differentiation on some products. Uh, Huge capital cost to get into the game. So it has suppressed the number of new entrants. So obviously the young biotechs threaten that a little bit. Lack of substitute products. If you need a prescription medicine, you need it, and you tend to buy it. Uh, excuse me. And then weak buyers and weak suppliers. The supply chemicals are relative, for the most part, are all just common assays, so nothing tricky there as far as buying the raw materials, so to speak, to make the stuff. And the buyers, where you see buyers fighting back is the insurance companies negotiating uh, payment amounts and the like. But for a long time, the prescription drug industry had a pretty good deal. You do a Porter's Five Forces analysis and you see why. We're going to work some examples where we're going to pick apart some industries and you're going to see why at that point in time industry profitability looked pretty good. Incidentally, one of the criticisms of Porter's Five Forces is it leaves out what some people think should be a sixth force called complementers. And in the Porter article, you saw him counter that. But let me tell you what complementers are. These are people whose products tend to benefit the sale. For example, the satellite radio industry, the sale of new cars tends to be a complementer because that's where they get the majority of their installs. People buy new cars and they buy a satellite radio in them, or they don't in this area of MP3. Likewise, app writers. What's one of the things holding back Windows-based phones? People perceive that there's an insufficient number of apps available. Likewise, why do people like to write on the iOS platform? Because there are a lot of people with iPhones, therefore they have a ready market share. So now let's look at what Porter's advice to you, the junior strategist, would be beyond industry profitability. A, pick a good industry to be in. He notes that industries vary widely on their profitability, so it's good to know what that historical profitability is, and there are structural reasons captured by the five forces to explain that. Then Porter would say, pick a strong position within that industry. We're going to talk more about position in some of our exercises, but this is where you get off of, well, industries make what they make, and you start getting into what do firms do to affect that. And frankly, you're going to see one of the, when you read Porter's stuff, you go, well, he's a little bit telling firms to be anti-competitive. And what I mean by that is he encourages firms, everybody go find their own niche and then leave each other alone. Because when you're not dueling over the same customers, profitability tends to increase. So it's one of those paradoxes we talk about, that one of the greatest minds on competition, Michael Porter, if you read his stuff carefully, what he says to companies is, get an industry where people go to different points of it, and then don't let anybody else in. And that gets to the final point, which is once you've got a position, now you want to alter those 5 forces so that they suit you. That may be deciding who you buy to, who you buy your supplies from, how you posture yourself. Do you erect barriers to entry consciously? How do you create switching costs? Again, these are firm level decisions beyond just selecting a position. Now we're talking about really developing a value chain, and that gets into what happens inside the firm. So in closing, the whole purpose of this chapter 2 in the external analysis is to remember you're not in this alone. You can't just keep your head down and hide and do what you want to do, because you've got other people around you doing things. And even the folks that tend to be very dismissive of competition, and Steve Jobs was one of those, very dismissive of what other people were doing. The reality was they were paying careful attention to what everybody was doing. And I'll give you a bit of a forecast. If your firm in BSG is one of those that does not pay careful attention to and accurately forecast the actions of your rivals, you won't win. In fact, you will finish not just in the bottom half, you will finish, if there's only 1 or 2 companies that are not doing a good job of monitoring their competitors, you'll finish as one of the bottom 1 or 2 teams, because you're not in it alone. The same is true in the business world as well. That's it for chapter 2. See you soon.